Hey guys, following the video that we're talking about canvas, we're going to talk about the point function, the line function, the rect function, and the ellipse function. So this is the code we had when we talked about the processing canvas. What it does is it creates a canvas 250 wide, 500 tall, black background. It's going to draw a red line, green line. Um, let's delete that stuff now. And let's talk about the point. Let's stop this, run it again to update, and all it does is draw the canvas. Okay. So the point function takes as argument a coordinate, um, which you should have learned about the coordinate system in this video. You should have learned it in this video. And basic summary is that this is how the x value is determined. This ruler up here. So an x direction, an x value of 200 corresponds to all the points that are on this line here, going from top here to down here. And a y value of 100 would be any point along this line, right? Because if you pick any point along this line, the y value is always going to be 100. So for instance, if you choose x equals 50, right, and y equals 100, it's going to meet up right here, and that's going to be the point corresponding to the coordinate 50, 100. And you'll see that as we write here. So let's do that. Let's set a stroke, and let's set this color to white. So 255. So to draw this point, we're going to use a white pen. This is a white pen. And let's draw a point at point 50 and 100, right? Which we talked about before is maybe right there, so about right there. You should see that like right here. Stop, run. And there it is. And to prove my point, we can draw, let's draw another point not too far away from it. And let's give it the color red. Okay, and let's draw a point at 50, 200. So we're going to use the same x value, right? So it's going to be along this line here, and it's going to be at y equals 200, so 200 to be right there. And there it is. If you don't really follow what I'm talking about, like you don't understand the coordinate system, do watch this video. And again, to get to this video, you go to processing.org, go to tutorials, and it's this one, Hello Processing by Daniel Schiffman. Okay. Okay. So that's the point function. All it does is it draws a particular pixel at a particular location. Let's talk about the line function. The line function is very similar to the point function in that it takes in 2 points instead of 1, and it draws a line between those 2 points, right? So actually, let's keep what we had there. So these lines of code, lines 8 through 12, draws this white pixel and draws that red pixel. Let's draw a line between those pixels. So to do that, we're going to use the line function. And guys, take note that the instructions from line 5 to line 14 belong in this function called void setup. It's in between these curly brackets. You have to put it in between those curly brackets, and make sure that the curly brackets for the void draw function also matches up. Okay. Back to what we were talking about. Let's draw a point between the point drawn using the white pen and the point drawn using the red pen. So the white point is located at 50, 100. So x equals 50, y equals 100. And then you have to specify a second point, and the second coordinate, sorry. and it's going to be at x equals 50 and x equals 200. Now, because the line falls under this stroke function, right? It's going to use the red pen, so we'll see a red line being drawn from here to here. And there it is. Now, this brings up a good point. You no longer see that white dot there. It's not because it's too small. That line has actually been drawn over on top of that white point. And don't worry about that. If we change the order, so the ordering of the code matters because the thing that gets done at the very bottom in your code appears before or after all the other stuff. So your computer will actually run this sequentially. First, it'll create a canvas. It's going to make a black background. Then it's going to draw with a red pen a point. So you can imagine a red point being here. So it's going to initially be all blank, with a black background. The red point is going to be drawn. Then this line is going to be drawn with a red pen. And then this white, using a white pen, this point is going to be drawn at 50, 100, so like right there. So this time around, remember we changed the in the location of our code in our program. So this is different from that program that we ran before, which drew this red line. This time we'll actually see that white dot. Stop here, run it again, and there it is. See? So the ordering in which you put your instruction matters. And you could see that when we talk about rectangle and ellipse. Let's talk about that now. Let's draw a rectangle with, let's draw a green rectangle. Stroke R, G, B. And let's draw a rectangle. I think you may have gone over this a while back, but we'll just review it. The rectangle takes in as arguments the starting location of the top left corner of the rectangle, right? So all rectangles have a top left corner, and this is where you specify the x location of that top left corner and the y direction of that top left corner. Then you specify the width and the height. So let's give it width of 100 and a height of 200. So we're going to see a rectangle that's 100 pixels wide by 200 tall. That is going to start at whose left corner is right up there. Okay, and let's run this code and see what happens. There it is. And remember, we drew it with a green pen, so that's what the stroke function does. It draws the border of the shapes that we draw with a particular color that we give it. Now, unlike line or point, there's another dimension. Because it's a two-dimensional object, the rectangle and the ellipse, you can think of, there's also another property of that shape, which is the fill. The fill refers to everything that's inside of the outline of the shape. And you can control the color of that fill by using a function called fill. Okay, and it takes in an RGB value, or a value from 0 to 255. Now 0 is black, so that's why the fill is black. We can turn it to gray, by picking a gray value. There it is. That's gray. Or we can turn it red. Red's my favorite color, so you'll see red a lot. Yeah. See, so that's fill. Now, you can, if you don't want any fill, like if you want this to be the color of the background, what you can do is just set the color to be the color of the background, like this. But that's not really reliable. because you have to keep them synchronized, right? You have to make sure in your code that the fill color is the color of the background. A more simple solution would be to type in to use the function no fill. And what that does is that for whatever shape that you're using, it's going to color automatically with the color of the with the background, so that oh, I'm sorry. So that's the reason why I forgot to close that window. So if you run the program again, yeah, it's just gonna appear with the most recent program. Um, it's gonna automatically, the no fill function is going to automatically set the fill of that shape to whatever the color of the background is, so that you don't have to worry about matching the color of the background in your code. So that's the fill. There's another cool thing that you can do with another function called stroke weight. If we go to processing.com, if we go to reference lists all the functions that you can use. So you can click on it and figure out what each one does. For instance, like curve detail, or curve actually. Curve's a cool function because it lets you draw curves. But we're working with lines and rectangles. You can look this up on your own time. But if you go to processing reference, I'm going to do a quick search. That's Control F to bring up this little search box for stroke. There's this function called stroke weight. What it does is it varies the how intense or how thick that line that we draw is, or the border that we use will be for a shape. So for instance, and let's see what it takes. And the stroke weight takes in a pixel weight, and the weight is going to be a number. Yeah, you can read here under the description. All widths are set in units of pixels. So if you write stroke weight equals 5, the weight of the the line width will be 5 pixels wide. You can get crazy with it, like stroke weight 100. It's gonna be huge. Let's see what happens here. Yeah, that makes sense, right? Let's set it to something reasonable, like 20. 20 is still pretty big, but I think we'll see. Yeah, the reason why you see it cut off a little bit here is because remember, the line's being drawn at 0, 0, and the weight is 20. So 20, you'll see 10 up here and 10 back here. Okay, but let's set weight to 5. And draws the line a little bit thinner. If you want to see that entire border, you just move the rectangle, right? Let's move it to 100, 50, 50. There it is. Now you can do something like stroke weight equals 20, and you'll see the entire picture. Okay. But right now, let's set it to 1. Now, similar to the stroke function, notice that this rectangle function is underneath the no fill and the stroke weight. The no fill and the stroke weight only applies to everything underneath it, so it applies to this rectangle. If we were to create another rectangle right here, let's set it at 100. At 100, 100. And let's give it a size of 10, 10 wide, 10 tall. Run it. You'll see that the second rectangle will also have these 4 properties. See how it's got no fill, and it's got a stroke weight of 1. If we change the stroke weight to, say, 5, the lines there will also get bigger. Now, if we wanted to draw, if you wanted to make this second rectangle a little bit different, you have to specify the stroke after it. Stroke weight 2. It's going to be a little bit bigger, like 5, so we can actually see the difference. Yeah, we change 5, we'll change the rectangle size so that it's a little bit bigger. And then let's use fill, and let's fill it with white, red. Yeah, red. because I like red. Run it. There it is. So see, this is how processing sort of works. The settings, you can think of these, of 3 lines of instructions as settings. The settings apply to the instructions directly below it. Okay, so rectangle is a function that draws something, and when it draws something, it's going to look for settings. What is the line color going to be? What's the line weight going to be? It's going to look for these instructions that is above it, not below it. So this rectangle won't use the settings below it. It's going to use the settings above it. So the ordering matters. For instance, we'll leave it there for now. Let's talk about rectangles now, or ellipses. Ellipses are a lot like rectangle. It just draws an ellipse. Let's do that down here. Oh, I accidentally made a stray character. And the function is ellipse. It's actually a lowercase e. Right? And it takes a top left corner, a radius, or a width, and a height. So, like the rectangle, these two functions that draw shapes will look up to these settings to do the drawing. So it's going to draw an ellipse at 0, 0. Let's move that down to 100 and 150. Ooh, look at that. That was totally unintentional. Yeah. The ellipse is a little bit tricky. The 100 and 150 specifies the corner, the top left corner of the ellipse, which is invisible, which is like right there. Actually, no, I'm sorry, I'm wrong. This is actually the center of the. Let me just look that up real quick so that I'm not telling you guys something that's untrue. Control X, ellipse, oops, back, Control F, ellipse, there we go. Here we can read about the ellipse. Ellipse takes in four arguments, right? A, B, C, D. A tells you the x-coordinate of the ellipse, B tells you the y-coordinate of the ellipse. Draws an ellipse oval on the screen. An ellipse with equal width and height is a circle. By default, the first 2 parameters are set location, and the 3rd and 4th parameters set the shape's width and height. The origin may be changed with ellipse mode. So there's another function called ellipse mode, and that changes how the arguments are interpreted. You can click on this here to figure that out. Okay. So the x and y, the first 2 arguments, a and b, represent the location. So here we have the location 100 and 150, right? So if we set the location to 0, 0, we should see that the center of the ellipse right there is going to move back up here. And it does. It's going to be 100 wide, and 200 tall. So it starts out up here actually, and then it's going to go down here, which is 200. Okay. Oh, I'm sorry. So this isn't actually 100 wide. This is 50 wide. That makes sense. If we put this back to 100, 150. So this is going to be 50. This is going to be 100. So 100 is along this line. And this rectangle is 200 tall, right? So this is going to be, from here to here is 50, right? Because we know that from here to here is 100. So this is 50, and this is going to be 100, and 150 is going to be right here. So the center of the ellipse is going to be right there. It's going to be 200 tall, right? So this is 100, 100, and it's going to be 100 wide. So that's why we see it fitting inside this box. That was coincidental, but I just talked through, why that is. The center's put here, which is 100, 150. To verify that, we can draw a point, right? Let's make this point 255, 0, 0, red point. point 100, 150. There's that red point. Okay, so that's the ellipse. You can read a little bit more about the ellipse down here if you want to mess around with it. I think we talked about line in the last video, so you guys have enough knowledge at this point to draw a rectangle or a stick figure. So next, I'd like you guys to draw a stick figure using rect lines, ellipse, points, and then one last thing. Let's talk about the ordering again, but this time with shape, the ordering of code with shape. So let's set stroke to 255. Red rectangle with a fill that is white, so it's going to be a white fill. And let's draw a rectangle at 50, 50. That is 100 wide by 100 tall. Square. We can run it. It's going to draw a square, and we know that. It's going to have a red border. Actually, I'll make it green, since it's a little bit difficult to see. Or whatever red and green is. I'm bad with colors. Yellow. Okay. It's difficult to tell. So let's just make it green. Terrific. Since it's a little bit difficult to see, let's just set the stroke weight to 5 pixels. So that's kind of thick. Green borders. Kind of thick. White fill the rectangle. Make it a square. There we go. And let's make a blue circle. Blue borders. Stroke weight. Let's set this to slim. Make this. Let's make this gray. And let's draw this ellipse at 50, 50. That is also by. Let's make it also 100 by 200. Okay, so this ellipse is going to be centered right here. It's going to be 100 tall, and that, or I'm sorry, 100 wide. So it's going to be 50 in the left, 50 in the right, or 50 pixels to the left, 50 pixels wide to the, with respect to that 50-50 center point. And it's going to be 100 tall, 100 wide. Ooh, I messed up there. Oh, okay. 50-50 is right here. I want it to be centered as a square. And that's alright. Yeah, the center of the square is not 50-50. That's why we don't see that ellipse right on top of the square. In any case, now I want to highlight the fact that it's behaving as we should. The ellipse used these settings, and the rectangle used these settings, lines 8 to 10. If we notice how the ellipse is drawn on top of the rectangle, that's because of the ordering in which the code is run. Up here, lines 8 through 11 draws that square. Afterwards, this ellipse is drawn. Because the ellipse is drawn after the square, we see the ellipse on top of the square. If we want to see the ellipse beneath the square, we have to put the ellipse before we draw the square, so that the ellipse gets drawn first. If we run it, we'll see that the square is placed on top of the ellipse this time. So that just demonstrates the importance of the order of the instruction. Okay, you might need to know that when you draw your stick figure. Also, I'll end this video here in the next video, which will end this series. I'll talk about the mouse x, mouse y variables and how you can use that. Okay, let's stop the video.